Hey everybody, it's Jay, and I have in front of me my Uberti Schofield number 3. This is a Cimarron import and is a top rake revolver with a 5-inch barrel chambered in .38 special. Now Cimarron offers them in .45 Colt and .44-40 in 7 and 3-inch barrels in addition to the 5-inch barrel, but some calibers are limited to certain barrel lengths. So be sure to check that out if you're interested in getting a different caliber. Now, I'm not extremely well versed in the history of these. I know a little bit about them, probably enough to give some convincing information and some false information. So I think I'm going to try to convince Misha to do a history video on these. He's been looking at getting a .44-40 Russian because it's a little more his speed because it is a military style arm. And I think that would make for an interesting video, don't you? You should say that in the comments, because I really do think he should get one if he can find one relatively affordable.
Yeah, and I give this a try. Yes, I have small hands.
And back on half cock.
That's right. I'm used to Webleys. Get out of there.
This particular model is something that I've wanted for a long time, pretty much since I saw Deadwood, which I think in the first episode of the first season, Al Swearingen pulls one of these out of a nightstand. And I ended up going with the 5-inch barrel because I really like the profile overall of this. The 7-inch barrel looks just a tad too long to me, even though it's the correct barrel length historically. But according to Cimarron, a lot of these guns were cut down to 5 inches, some even down to 3 inches on the commercial market after they were surplused, or could even be ordered custom that way. So it's not too far off. .38 Special is also not a historical caliber for these, but it's also close enough to what was available. Plus, to be honest, I just have a lot of .38 Special already for other revolvers, so it really made sense just to stick with the .38 Special, even though the Cyrillic 7-inch version is really cool looking to me, in that with its weird trigger guard spur and everything. But again, I'd have to get into a caliber that I'd only have for that gun and don't stock already, so the .38 Special was the obvious choice. So we'll get into a little bit of the features of this. Obviously, I mentioned before, it's top rake. So in order to engage the top rake, all you have to do is put it into half cock, thumb the latch back, and rotate it downward. Now if you want to eject all shells, which I'll demonstrate here in a little bit, you rotate the barrel all the way down, the ejector comes up and flings the shells out. So I'm going to be approaching this less from a historical aspect than a modern shooting aspect. So I'll try to do my best to kind of convey the experiences that I've had. And to this extent, I think I'll probably go ahead and start with not really do's and don'ts, because to be honest with you, if you're old enough to buy one of these and you want to drop $1,100 on one of these to beat up, you're an adult, make your own decisions. So I'm not going to tell you what to do and what not to do, but I will say maybe some shoulds and shouldn'ts. One of the things that you'll see people do in these videos is thumb the latch back and then slam the barrel forward. And that will send all of the casings, typically, ejecting out through the top of the gun. Now, what Uberti recommends in the manual is to thumb the latch back and then rotate it all the way forward till it hits the ejector, return, and then locks down. So you have to kind of do it with enough force to eject in order to do that. What I've found is it's easiest to let gravity work with you by rotating it out and then down. You see that there is some force required to hit that return plunger on the bottom there for the ejector. The reason why I would not cowboy that action open is not just because the manual doesn't mention it, but for one, if you do that, as you saw how when I very gently opened it, a lot of the casings were left stuck in the chambers. So you're going to end up having to manually pluck casings out if they don't just drop right back in. That's one issue. The other issue is this plunger is just a really small piece of steel. So, and it's activated by this ledge here on the bottom of the barrel. So if you fling that open, you're slamming that steel into that other steel, and one of them is going to win. And I'm guessing it's probably going to be the part that's a solid piece of steel here and not this little plunger. It's going to put some unnecessary wear on that, I believe. The other thing that I see people do a lot is bring the gun back behind them and then smack the back of their thigh with the barrel while thumbing the latch back in order to open it. Same issue with that as with doing the cowboy action and smacking it down real hard, is you're really just putting unnecessary wear on those parts. Now again, like I said, I'm not going to tell you not to do that because it's your business, but I wanted to try to give a realistic expectation of what these things are like to shoot, because that's not really a recommended way to reload. The other thing that I see people do occasionally is try to flick the barrel closed. The biggest weak point on a top break revolver, and why top break revolvers are really effectively at this point obsolete, is that latch. And the reason why you don't see modern guns, at least modern design guns, in modern calibers and modern Magnum calibers, is because this latch system is relatively weak. Compared to a swing out cylinder, it's much weaker. So it just can't handle Magnum calibers like a modern swing out gun can. So what you really want to be careful of is bringing that latch back in solidly, but not slamming it back and forward, because all you're doing is, again, adding more stress to that latch. So that's why these are really only chambered in cowboy loads, is because really mechanically these just cannot stand up to modern Magnum loads. Now, there is a gun, I believe, called the MP412 Rex, which was a Russian top break revolver chambered in Magnum calibers. But to be honest with you, I don't really know how well those things hold up over time, because they never made it over to the United States. So I wonder, once people started putting hot loads in them, that sounded bad, if they actually would hold up over time or not. I don't know, because don't have any hands-on experience with it. Very few people, I'm sure, in the United States, if any people in the United States, have hands-on experience with it. The sights are fixed. They're non-adjustable. If you have the hammer forward, you're not going to be able to see down your sights. You have to thumb the hammer back. That's pretty typical on single-action cowboy guns. Fortunately, my gun hits really close. It hits quite low, if I remember right. So I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way without the speed loaders. Figure it might be a useful data point just to show how quick or how slow it is to load one at a time. Go ahead and load up 6 more. I'm going to do them 2 at a time here. Definitely a lot faster than a loading gate. And it's way low. Forget how low this thing hits. There we go. At this range, I'm having to aim about 3 inches above the target. Clear? At about 7 yards, but I'm sure that that's because these are probably sighted in at further distances. The trigger is quite good. I'd say it's between 4 and 5 pounds on the single action. So accuracy is perfectly competent on these. The claim to fame on these is that they're very fast to reload. So much faster to reload than opening up a loading gate and rotating the cylinder and loading one round at a time. One of the other things you might hear on the internet is that there are no speed loaders for these. That's something that one forum I read said, no, we get one of these threads every few months, somebody asking if they have speed loaders for top brakes. And their answer is, no, there are not any. Now, My experience is different. Now, maybe their experience is with 45LC or 4440, but legitimately the very first speed loader that I grabbed, that I just already had for my 686, my Alpha Proj Revolver, which is a 686 speed loader, actually, right off the bat, worked. Now, it's not a perfect fit, but, and it's going to hang up a little bit more with these snap caps because there's no weight on them at all. It fits pretty close, and it's pretty fast to reload with the speed loader. These are HKS speed loaders. I got them on Amazon, I think, for 10 bucks. And they're not my go-to speed loaders. I use a different brand of speed loader, which is, the name is escaping me right now, because they're a little bit narrower. And these are a lot wider. But because these are a lot wider, it actually works pretty well with that larger cylinder. So again, it's not a perfect fit, but you totally can use a speed loader. This is the HKS 586 speed loader. Works with it. So that is another thing that is sort of a myth that I've seen online. But again, maybe they're talking about 45 long Colt or something like that, where maybe the speed loader situation is different. But with 38 Special, it works quite well.
You'd be dead in the trenches by now.
Yeah. Not quite as noisy as that 12 gauge. More blast though. I'm gonna reload it.
So what you're saying is you want a top brake 12 gauge revolver.
Right. That's what the world needs. Not only more top brakes, but just 12 gauge ones.
Exactly. Someone saw a judge and went, I'll do you one better.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot how. This thing hits really low. Such a short range, so I always forget that. Clear? So the gun is reasonably accurate. It's fast to load. It has a very decent trigger. I've heard some people complain about grit on the trigger. I don't have any of that. I've heard about gritty actions and stuff. I don't have any of that either. It's a very smooth operating gun. And I think it's very attractive too. The stocks are a very plain wood. They're not real glossy, but that's fine. That's more period appropriate than something like a very shiny high laminate. The hammer and the latch system, as well as the trigger guard and the little detent for the return for the ejector, are all case hardened, and those are also, in my opinion, quite attractive. They do also offer these in a polished nickel with a faux ivory grip. That's not really my speed. I just like the plain Jane blued finish. So overall, realistically, I don't have any complaints much at all with this gun. It's a lot of fun to shoot. That's not actually true. I do have one complaint, but it's something that happens with a lot of revolvers, so I can't really blame that on this gun in particular. But a lot of older revolvers, you get blast from the cylinder, and it feels a little bit like a sandblast, or even almost like a paper cut dragging across your knuckle on your offhand, because it blasts back this way. It's not comfortable. But again, that's not uncommon, so that's why I almost didn't even think to mention it, because it's something that kind of surprised me, because I haven't shot a cowboy single action in a centerfire round in forever, so I wasn't expecting it whenever it happened, but it is not uncommon at all on these, so not really, I guess it is a nitpick maybe, but there you go. Otherwise, like I said, not really much at all to complain about. It works well. It feels really well built. It's attractive. I haven't had any issues with it. I've shot probably about 200 rounds through it so far, and I'll keep shooting it because right now it's my only centerfire single action, and I'm really enjoying it. So hopefully I'll get a rifle to go along with it at some point in the future, and we'll do a follow-up video then. So actually I have snap caps in this, so pull that trigger. Pretty oily because I had it oiled for storage. Might be closer to a 5-pound trigger. But it's not bad. It's totally usable. Definitely not, I would say not as good as my Performance Center 627 in the single action. But like I said, I know people have complained online about this triggers being really gritty. Mine is not at all. Feels quite nice. So yeah, this is Jay. Hope you liked the video. Please click like if you did. Be sure to subscribe to us if you haven't already, and check out the link to our Patreon page if you're interested in helping support us. And we'll see you again soon next time.